for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumined, beloved, divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this sacred space with me here today. And once again we will go deeper into the essence, the core of love. So if you've noticed, as of the late, the videos were coming through differently, and of course it means also that I'm changing. It means that all of us are changing. It means that you are also changing. This video will be on the continuation of the beloved journey, but more so with the emphasis on the Tantric Beloved path. And what this is, I've talked about this years before, and it's been a journey of mine for quite so many years, and it took a lot actually for me to return to this core principle, passionate purpose of mine after all that was basically created through the transgression. But what I realized and noticed is that nothing is as powerful as the power of love, and once it awakens deep within us. And recently I had this beautiful exchange with someone. I was having a few spirit guided sessions. You know, that's kind of the work I also do with spirit and other people coming for assistance. And we've just been having this conversation, and the person was so sweet, and they were telling me how there's this shift they felt in me as of the late, and how now I feel more organic and more human, and just sharing myself and not being so about knowledge, you know, and going in that direction. Basically, that was the pursuit for so many years. And that's exactly what I talk about today, and how this sacred Tantric Beloved path actually changes you to the very core. Because for me, you know, what or who I was, well, the who was always the same, but what I was before the transgression was a being who constantly had this upsurge of divine intelligence coming through, and so much light intelligence to share, and so much knowledge, and it was always deeply passionate within me and coming through. But there was always an element of me that did not allow myself to have just this human experience. Well, I had my own kind of human life just as anyone else. But what was missing was that, you know, when I come here to sit with you and share in an open presence, there was an element of a filtering in which, you know, I disseminated the information coming through in a rather, you know, kind of still a little more technical way, not as much through the heart as I would like to. And one thing that was also stopping me from that was that there was a very fixed element of that transgression through which these beings incepted me with this thought, this belief that I'm just here to be of service and sacrifice to others, that I myself as a human being don't matter, that I'm not important. And when I finish this work, I'm just going to go off and it doesn't matter, you know? And I'm going to be forgotten probably, and, you know, new people would come, and that's basically their thing, and that's how they work. So it took an experience very personal and deeply intimate to me and for me in my life that shook me to the core of going back and returning to bringing that love back to my human child. And finally, I feel that this love is overcoming me. It's becoming me in all ways. And it's just like I have no other choice. I've just fallen into this ocean of waving, of webbing, of weaving this love. And it's not even that I'm becoming love. It's like love is becoming me. It's like love is becoming a specialized, intimate person, you know. And the problem in my case with so many people has been that sometimes they did not even want to approach me. And oftentimes when I did come into contact with someone in the beginning of their sharing how they found me, and so it was very much always a similar story. They saw me like up there in some pedestal, this woman holding all this knowledge and super open and activated, but they always felt kind of like less than me in terms of how much they integrate and embody. And that's something I want to talk about today, and how these filters are actually being debunked and dissolved through us coming and returning to that home, this home space of love. Because so many of you are ready now. You're feeling this call, a deeper call to your true soul purpose and the return for home. And we're all feeling this return to the womb, this womb of life. And this is what we've already been talking about. Today we're going to go deeper, right? Because the notion of today's little alteration and deepening of the subject will be, it's not just about the self, but also about the other, or the external beloved, that which we use to anoint the inner beloved, and then how we grow into that which we call divine trinity of life, right? And how creation becomes more, just because we came to this planet and we've simply had that experience, and that in fact it is an experience. It's not a projection of the mind. It's not something that we're supposed to make something of, it cannot compare to anything we've known in the old rigid system or the 3D belief system. It's just new, and it keeps reinventing itself, okay? So this notion of, something being above us or more advanced is actually what is perpetuating this separation. And this ego that most humans still are facing, which is all the denial, all the unwillingness to face all the issues, the challenges that we're still going through, the things that are still not allowing us to be fully ourselves, and maybe even explore who that self is for the first time in our life. And all that keeps us in this place of feeling stuck and victimized and not making the choices we would like to make and not so happy about ourselves. This ego, right? And we might call it the devil, but I just like to call it separation because it feels most organic. And this separation is just basically so imbued within us. It's almost like we're programmed not to feel. And when we're thinking most of the time, we're actually projecting ourselves in this ideal we have, or in ideas that we might be having about something, constantly analyzing it. We're constantly pulling it and pushing it to the future. And we can't pull that essence back to the self. And so the Tantric Beloved path is very important, not just from the perspective of what Illumined Union is, which is the illumination of the inner human embodiment experience that I've talked about many times. Sorry, I have to put my gloves on because it's quite windy here. As you can see, I'm all bared up in this soft, cozy embrace. And so what happens is, in most of our connections, we don't realize that these connections that are very intense and have a powerful impact on our lives, they exist for this acceleration. And everyone who is on this Tantric Beloved path, they will feel it. And it's not the kind of mental idea that you might have and think, well, I want to be somehow a part of this path, or this is something I would like to explore. It's more of an intrinsic but very subtle knowing, because you have a pull. There is this constant return of your focus there. Even though a lot of our focus in our day-to-day life seems to be turning elsewhere, like this transgression has kept me so focused on, just dissolving through it. I had to stay alive, so I had to be with that and constantly being the techniques and all these things, right, that I would need to access to actually break through. And there was need to be, for that time being, a part of this divine intelligence and more of a light being integration, understanding. And now this sort of completed itself. And I'm not saying I'm not still healing, because I am. I was just recently shown that the 90% of the transgression energies that are causing chronic pain in my body have left, but they still come. And when I'm in these intense pain waves, it's terrible because they come and go. They're not as intense as long in duration as they used to be. So there's a longer period in between, when the next wave comes, but it's still a healing. It's still a processing. So the body still experiences these things. And as the body experiences these things, the body still uncovers lots of these beliefs. Like for me, sharing my transgression confession video, I've shared with you how basically this transgression, it's like it ruined my body. My body's no longer the same because of it, not just in appearance, also in the capabilities and what I was able to do before and what I now can no longer do at this point. The body's using just so much energy, it's very hard for me to gain weight because all the energy goes into, just purging that out of my system. And it is very intense, and it does weaken this, what we call the feminine principle. So as I was going deeper within, I actually realized that was the intention of this transgression, because what they do, as you know, they're trying to annihilate the feminine principle. And when the feminine principle as the womb is not present there, through not just grace, but also beauty. And the beauty is not just inner beauty, but it's also the beauty of what spirit creates through our form, through our bodies. And if that is not honored, then if you can't feel that love for the self and that acceptance, that will have a strong impact on how much that tantric flow and cultivation can come through you. So the first part, I want to give a little more connotation to the self-development, and then we're going to talk more about these tantric illumined partnerships, okay? And I'll share my experience with you as well, show you some cards, read you a poem again, because My notebook is now more full of poems than channeled automatic writings, which I'm actually enjoying very much. So a part of many people's journey on this path has been about first accepting themselves, but we're kind of moving on to the next stage, which is enjoying ourselves. And this is what the transgression energy is, not just in my very extreme example that basically no one on the planet experienced as intensely as I did, but this has to do with my mission that was trying to be prevented. But still, everyone experienced a level of transgression in their own level, in their own life. And we've just been discussing this recently about these so-called whispers, right, that I keep mentioning so often, and I will mention them later as well, how they're influencing these unions of not coming together in their falseness that they're sharing and what they're whispering. And I'll share more about that as well. Probably not going to share everything in the whole video because I have so much to say on this topic. So maybe it will have to be a continuation because I get ahead of myself, and you can notice that my energy changes and I start speaking really fast. It's almost like I need to say it all at once. And then I'm like, okay, just breathe, right? People will not get it as fast. So we can go slow as well. So the first thing is to understand that these energies, they're leaving these footprints on our bodies that are very detrimental for us in a way that they disable this pure connection, which is pure honoring of what the sacredness of the body can do and achieve, maybe just in one lifetime, but how much the flesh can carry the beauty of the grace of spirit. Like in my own example, I died almost so many times and still the body survived. You can't believe the grace of the body that is cultivated through these tantric flows of love, which is for me the mother. That is the womb of life. And if there cannot be this return to the womb of life, to this love, then this tantric illumined union is not possible. And then the tantric inner beloved path will remain always a little dormant. It won't be pulled up to the surface and lived in its fullness. So there will always be this sense of unfulfillment, which is exactly what the transgression energies are trying to create and oppose. Because being in that union is the strongest catalyst for not just our own growth, but for the collective, for the planet, for creation in general. When there can be a coupling so strong coming together through such purity and truth of love. And let's face it, most relationships that people live nowadays are for maintaining a comfort zone level and having their status quo lifetimes, just day after day, that routine. Like every day on earth is lived the same way, just with little slight modifications here and there, but it's basically one day lived all over again each time. And that's not the deepening of the growth that this tantric connection is able to move through us. And that is the desire of not just the Illumined Union Project, which is a huge thing in creation actually, but actually what it also means for the human experience in itself and how, pivotal it is for that. It is so crucially important. Okay, so this moving into the womb, and I'll explain a little afterwards how masculine and feminine polarities are coming together at this time, what some of the things we need to be careful about and watch for, because we can get into separation rather fast still. But for the first thing, I just wish to emphasize that we're still noticing these waves of coming together, coming apart, coming together, coming apart. But everything that, begins at the beginning should begin with one simple knowing, which is you are a lover. Beyond anything else, all of us are divine beloveds. First and primary mission of all of us is lover of life. And when that lover within awakens, like Rumi wrote these poems, it's like a poem. Maybe you have a mirror or you have a lover in a physical life that would reflect that and they would trigger those feelings within you, but it's ultimately you waking up to a greatness and beauty of life, and it just flows through you, which is why I use the words love becoming you. It's almost like love hijacks you, and eventually it pulls all the transgression and all that is not of love out of you. But it takes full surrender and trusting love, which is what we talked about in the first few videos. So today we're going to go deeper into what this Tantric Beloved means. And I'm going to start with sharing my story, right? So I said that last year I had an experience which pulled that essence out of me again. And it actually caused me to go back and reflect on my life in the early years of my awakening. So my awakening was around 2010, early 2010 and late 2009, 2009. So what happened was I had also experienced what it means to be in a karmic bondage I'm not saying that, because I was not on earth before, I did not have a karmic entanglement, but I realized through my own relationship experience back then what it means to be in a karmic tie, and how badly it hooks you in, and how it's based on control and dominance one over the other. And even if it's a very people would say it looks very static, not much is happening, it's a very comforting relationship, it's still karmic, because there's no ultimate growth, there is no higher pursuit of the Tantric Beloved path, there's simply nothing. And if it's a very distorted or toxic relationship, it also keeps pulling you down, and it lowers your frequency to extent. And sometimes people think that bullying is very extroverted, like, that if there's no bullying, that things look good on the surface, but there's also a very silent bullying when you can't fully be yourself, when someone is always monitoring you and your actions, and you're not fully free in that relationship. You're always hiding something, and you're not feeling like you can just open up and share freely and be yourself. That's also a bondage, and that's an attachment. It's an addiction, basically. And we give these vows that become hijacked, and it's kind of like eventually we realize, ooh, what are we actually serving here? And we give up, we sacrifice our own lives and our own freedom, because there's still a belief in humans that love is something you need to make sacrifices for, until eventually you forget who you are, you no longer know yourself, or maybe you haven't even begun the journey. Like people, even before their awakening, they enter these partnerships and they just no longer know who they are. And so that just kind of hijacks them. And you think, well, I need to be that for others, and I don't want to hurt anyone. And you're just basically playing a movie script. She's very cruel to the self, actually. So this tantric union is something that still souls who are on this path, it's still calling them no matter what. No matter how deeply hooked you are, there's this voice, this longing in the soul that keeps coming you. And someone might come along the way, or maybe there's a few people that keep coming and you can't see it, but there's like people coming in, souls basically, that are kind of inviting you. It's like, look, come home, come home. So recently we talked about this with someone in a session, and they said, well, in the beginning I had a really beautiful relationship. It was all perfect, and it could lead to marriage, and it was nothing basically wrong with it. There was no like special growth. And the being already knew that's not their path, that their path is this accelerated growth, and learning through maybe different relationships until eventually learning about their own inner divine illumined union. So this sacred masculine and feminine path that also Christ and Magdalene represented at their time is this cultivation of the Tantric Beloved. And this union that does not happen person to person level, but is a union and communion of two souls. So I'm going to also talk about how to shift that energy into soul communion instead of going too much for the happening at the personality level and what's being said and shared, and how we have to pull away from that and build more in the soul connection. I'll talk about that as well. And it basically... it's very intense. It means that these two beings, like I already shared, they need to put the service to spirit, making them become this refined beauty and shared togetherness, rather than saying we're committing in this kind of way. For me personally, when I'm with someone, if I ever was in that way, I would give my all. It doesn't mean I'm physically with them, but when I'm kind of accompanying someone along the ride, I give my all. I'm always like in poker. I'm all in, And people might not feel it if they're not open, but I'm always all in. I just stay. Sometimes I stay even it exceeds itself already. But it's like there's such loyalty in me. And people not always see it because they have an expectation of what that is, how you need to show up for them. But for me, it's no 50-50, right? It means that there's an element that when I go into something, it always needs to be based on union. It needs to be fusion. If there's superficiality, if there's something of more of a fantasy, an illusion, I'm not going to participate in that. Not much long. Not long at least. So it's like this tantric union journey is basically also very scary for people. Most of the times, even though we have so much talking about the twin flames community right now, there's still not a lot of emphasis on the healing that's behind the scenes. People talk about it from the perspective, this is happening with this person, that's happening with that person, they're having this on their minds or feelings, and this one is thinking this and that. It goes much deeper, right? This is about the union of these polarities and the bringing of those separations into our focus and perception. And if there's willingness and choice to bypass the notion of free will and moving together in a unified will when the source wants to really bring something together, because that togetherness would serve a greater purpose than, let's say, each individual. For that is how things are in creation. Everything always leans back to Trinity. Trinity represents home immediately. It's home. But in most relationships, they're static and things are always like this, right? It's the stalemate of, we know that is the Two of Swords, and not much happening, and there's no progression. Basically, partners are blocking each other like this. And you can't have that soul union with just anyone. I know most people would think, yeah, you can't because we're all souls. Well, not. Souls have specific chemistry to them. That's why there's an alchemy to what people call falling in love. You can't define it, right? You can't label it. But the mother keeps on asking us to open our hearts to what we now know as falling in love, to allow ourselves to be in that state, but not from that attached perspective. It's like the love that keeps pouring us and reaching us for higher levels of who we are and what we can be. Like my prayer, for instance, right now in this moment has been for a while now. Beloved God, I know I can't make anyone in particular love me, but it is already a gift in itself of knowing and just loving them. So thank you for that blessing. And I mean it because I've had my own experience with that. I know how it feels, and I'll explain more about this as I progress today, but it's just so important that we don't stay fixated on these person-to-person commonalities, but we really follow the guidance, the current of the soul. When the connection is really soul-based, and I know a lot of people, because they love someone in their real life, they say, well, we have a soul connection because we're souls in human bodies. Not all beings, when they're in physical relationships, connect soul to soul. It's still rare, let me tell you, because most people don't even embody their soul yet. And maybe we have one person starting to embody their soul, but the other is still closed out. And of course, naturally, they tend to progress towards another level of their growth. And this is where most people fear making those changes, because we are so indoctrinated into the system that tells us this is marriage. You're in it for so many years, so it has to stay like this. Or, we're killing our souls like this. Because the soul is longing and the person's saying, nope, I'm staying fixed. And this is where the victimization comes in. So today I'm going to explain more about how this opening to love is basically a thing that just happens. It's like a lightning bulb, a switch going off, and you don't know when, how it happened. It's just, boom, you're ready. And at that moment when you're ready, it's like nothing else becomes important. So I'm going to share more about my experience now. I'm then going to read you the poem, and then we're going to talk about the feminine, masculine polarities more. So years back, after that karmic experience I had, I was really tortured and abused in that relationship. And when I started opening up and waking up, I met a few people. But there was always this filter still from my past there. And this was around 2011, right? And I met a few people, and in particular one person, and I was really defensive back then. I was putting my guard off all the time, and I was focused on my work, and I was always like, nope, this is my path now, this is what I need to do. And actually I'm happy this happened because it had to, because I had to first realize who I am. I had to do my own awakening. I had to do me. I had to blossom into learning how to cultivate my own abundance, becoming this empress, right? Which is what the feminine in its ultimate really becomes, as a manifestation of the womb principle lived as life on earth. And so back then I had a really good knowing of myself and my truth and values. I've always had them, and I always had the love. I was never a cold person, but I could give that defense because I still had wounds from the past, because I knew how a relationship can pull you down. And I didn't want to give love a chance back then. I didn't feel that was important for me in my life. So I said no to it. And basically that led me to never actually having a kind of relationship that people have, which is long-term and commitment. And for me, that was like bondage, because where most people are, and when I met some people along the way in this, recent 10 years, it was always like, no, they're so hooked into these beliefs, how a relationship is supposed to look like. And I was always a free spirit. And the funny thing is, I would give anyone my all, but they did not want that all. They wanted a specific filter of what I can give them and a future projection. So they basically blocked it all. And then I couldn't feel it as well. And it wasn't time. But when I look back on this now, I'm feeling like now I finally am this love. And after all that I've learned about myself and given to the world, and I've exploded within myself and imploded in a way too, became this supernova. There's just now the only thing left is to have this human experience and allowing my divine child, right, that I am, to blossom in this love. And this is happening now. This is, for me, an alchemical process. It's a journey. It's changing me. And when this feeling returned last year to me, I was looking like this. And that day, it was around my birthday. And I was like, what's happening? I'm feeling it again after such a long time. And I was so happy. I was so excited because this was like starting to really blossom. And then it died again because I had to go through 3 most difficult months in my life ever, you know? And now this year has opened up again, but this time it's like, it's just accelerating. It's just growing. And when I feel that, when I feel into that, and I feel that because I had this soul to soul experience, and I felt this connection, and I felt the interlocking, and I knew what it was for me at that level. Although before I also had other wounds because of that wound, right, that was first initiated through that karmic experience, I became, as in parallel to my work, always the healer, always the giver, always the caretaker. So even when I had met someone as the opposite gender, I was healing them. And there was still an imprint of that. And last year I had that mirror showing me, oops, this is not that. This is not where we're going to go now. Nope, this is still showing me there's something unresolved and unhealed within me. That human aspect within me still craved to heal, to give, to give. And it was always like this bouncing wall, right? This defense. And each cycle of separation, like coming together and then coming apart, means that during these apart periods, we have to integrate the self. And I explained this just recently in the session, how this integration is not like few steps journey. It's intense. Because as you know, in the physical world, when the mother gives you a mirror, she gives it out of love, and it's for your ultimate highest good. And first, there will be a major awakening. There will be like this boom, you know, this feeling. And then that mirror will trigger you. You're going to get triggered. And that triggering will cause a response. In most cases, wounded responses come out. And then you're going to need to witness yourself. You're going to not only need to integrate that, but you will also going to have to feel through every layer, and you're going to have to absorb it fully within your being. And when you fully absorb it, you can digest it. And then you can have not just that which I call self-acceptance, but enjoying yourself. Because in each cycle, you come together closer to your true self and unifying with your soul, with your being, more gathering this illumined light. Each time more of you comes into the body and more love becomes you. And so there's like these periods, these intervals that are specifically designed for us to cultivate from within. And then there's a period to go out with this love, and then there's a period to retreat. And I'm going to, again, in the last part of the video, explain a little more about this womb principle and how the feminine is truly supportive in guiding the masculine force instead of what we were doing in the physical most of the time through our learned programming. So in my experience, right, I have now these moments when I'm like this, seriously. I get so in, and then it's hard to pull myself out because I can feel the energies almost like interlocked. Like, for better or worse, there they are. I can't disentangle them. They're just entangled. But this is also a dangerous thing when there's this level of union present, because as humans, we still don't know what to do about it. So we sometimes take in a little more of, let's say, the other energy or the other's essence. And let's say they're still healing something and you have to do your own healing. And then you would take on and absorb that, which is something we have to be really careful of, because we're not here to pine over someone, wait over someone, you know, nothing like that. We're needing to use that mirror to become self-reflective and to help us to better cultivate that which most people, when they have a relationship and then it's over, an aspect of it is over and dies, they feel that longing, they feel that, oh, there's a void, you know. I no longer feel that, which is how I know I've healed a major portion of that, because I used to feel that. You know, whenever someone leaves, there's like an emptiness there and you need to fill it up again. But this time, in this last week, I felt, oh, I don't feel that emptiness anymore because I went deeper into the soul, and I explained this too. So this is the most important part where we are now, to understand these interlocked waves are happening for a reason, but we're needing to learn how to live them so we don't become so subdued to them that we lose ourselves. It has to be a filling kind of love. It has to fill us up, not deplete us. And only then we know it's true love. And that true love is first from within. And it's, for me, how I experienced it. It was like just, each time I was like, no, I already end the cycle. I leave the energy and I can't cut it off anymore. I used to cut things off like so rapidly if I could. And that was, again, that ego part of me. Still that separation. When something hurt, when it was a memory of the wound. Oh. And sometimes people don't cut off, but they have their own mechanisms. I just recently told someone, oh, you have your own way when you sting, and you can sting like hell. We all have that Scorpio inside of us. But people don't recognize it when they do it. They might see it in others because it triggers their wound. But each one of us has that gift in a way. We know how to poke and how to spike, right? So when that happens, we need to see those responses. And these relationships, these soul connections are usually so profound. They have such a deep impact on our life. But once you see them for what they truly are, and for me that happened in the dream plane, there was this interlocking happening. And since then I was changed. Like all of a sudden these notions, which I still used to have, like needing to heal and be in, like certain way, it's like they dropped off. And I had this, I'm not saying that elements were not so present, but I'm saying that the mirror that was smudged became like a crystal clear window, and I could see with the eyes of the soul into that connection, like what it's really teaching me, what it's bringing here for me, to me. And it could be more clear in my space. But that also meant that what is still personal on the physical level happening, I need to sort of step away from. Remember when we did the Christ relationships video, when I said you need to always return to the core in the middle of the circle, right? That's the thing. That's the work we need to do. And when you're awake and being really awake, not partially. A lot of people say they're awake just because they know what's a soul, and that's not awakening. It's like levels and layers to it. And yeah, we're each on different stages, but that doesn't mean we're not deserving of each other in our love. Because I notice these patterns in people. They're gonna kind of deflect others away and reject them because they themselves don't want to feel rejected. It hurts. So maybe you have an experience from the past when someone did something or walked away, or you have still a little connection and you think, what if they do that again? Well, what if becomes your greatest nightmare, and eventually, because you create with your projections, that's where you're going to create. But you're doing it forcefully, and you're forcing that person to show you the mirror again because obviously you still have it. It's not them necessarily embodying this in this moment. They're almost like forcing them because out of love, they're willing to show you that, listen, look, you still have this. And maybe something in reversal that they do for you, So this is very tricky because, as I explained in the previous videos, we went deeper into the notion of our spirituality, in which we all think we're so spiritual, we have that understanding. This love journey has nothing to do with understanding. Absolutely not. It's totally irrational. It's absolute surrender. It is total release of control, which is that emperor, right? And moving into the empress, whether you're a man or a woman. That's the cultivation of life at its finest. And this is where our happiness lies. Our happiness is not in rigid, fixed modules. It cannot be found, and it won't be found. So I don't know how much it takes for some people. For me, I cannot not be happy. I have to feel it in this moment. That's the only moment when I'm alive. I can't project something, a version for the future that I have not even gotten there. And I let it drive my life. I let it be my driving wheel, which puts things in motion. No, the life force that flows through me when I love does. And I've gotten to love so deeply and so unconditionally now that I've never loved like this before. And that mirror has led me to finally realize that what I was before is nothing comparing to now. And I've had all the knowledge in the world, but that is basically what I was craving for, to love in that way and to love so deeply. And to go in that love state like, oh my God, it's almost like, that movie Twilight. Some people hate it, some people like it. Well, I like it. So don't judge me for that. But I like the visuals of it. I like the aesthetics. And I like certain ideas about it. Not the vampire thing, though. I'm strongly against that. But there's something in that scene where Bella, she does something like, when that love is just so intense, she says something like, and then in that moment, I was irrevocably, I don't know what the word she uses, like in love with, And it's that overcoming. right? It's when love overcomes you. But where we have still issues with that love overcoming us, we let it overwhelm us, and we then project with that love. It has to always return back to us, to the self. And this is healthy. It's toxic if you love someone. Let's say you say, I love them so much. And you're like constantly like, it's just what they call in these communities, runner chaser. We all live through that sometimes, not just with other gender people or this masculine and feminine polarity playing out. It's not just through gender, but in these energetic expressions, right? Through these polarities. And it's basically allowing ourselves to feel so deeply, because that feeling opens up our heart. That will automatically dissolve the trickster, which is the ego, and it is the separation, which is like always no, defense. And it's not always cutting things off. Sometimes it's someone who always pulls away into their silence. That's also bullying in a way. Because when you're constantly retreating into the silence, you're bullying the other being as well, because you're never giving them the reciprocity of what you're feeling, and you're keeping them on hold. And when you're keeping someone on hold, they're like a puppy dying to get the answer, and you're basically hooking their energy in. Even when you leave, you're basically still pulling them, because there's an element of being attached to them as well. There's like an element of obsession. And we do that out of childhood patterns. The way we've been programmed has nothing to do absolutely with our soul. So no one here is being judged. We need to notice this, because if we want to go in the next step, which is the Tantric Beloved journey, which we're going to talk about more towards the end, maybe in the next video a little even more. But this is the basics. If you can't return home to what the soul is and how the soul is and its qualities, and you keep reinstating these ego-like personality traits, and you can't feel where your heart is, what your soul is, and who also and what your soul loves, because we do know. This is why chemistry exists, because it shows us where these sparks are, because sparks mean there's a magnetic energy of creation. There's creativity there, and creativity is not always you needing to create something physical, but you're creating more space for your soul to come into you, to grow into you, which you can't when you're in a static situation, right? And so it's becoming crucially important for us to see where these obsessive patterns also lie, because this attachment to someone always comes from, it's like, when we say I can live with you and I can live without you, that it's also an attachment. Because true union and true love is, I'm with you because I choose to be, because I love my soul so fully. I wish to overflow with that love through you. I wish to pierce through you, and I want our souls to penetrate each other. Just ultimately, just without an agenda. But what should this mean for us? And it has to be completely unprogrammed, and that's why it's difficult. Imagine writing a totally blank sleeve paper when you had all you've known was this tiny box. I know it's not easy for anyone. Even me, with being here for the first time, I'm still human and I'm going through the same experiences, a little wiser, most, but still, that cannot be a catch, because with most spiritual people it is, because they think they're so spiritual, they don't have this. So we were going through this in this session we just recently had, noticing how this is still playing out. And I said to that person, spiritual people are often the worst, because they have this fixed idea about how much knowledge they gathered, that they don't have this, they're already so perfect. But when it comes to relationships and union journey, you have to let all that drop. This is not about judging things like, you're spiritual when you're like this. When you're with me, you're supposed to be like this. It's not allowing the human self in, and it will make us feel unaccepted and uninvited into the space, which is just basically two lovers. They don't assess each other through their programming. They're just sharing their soul essence and imbuing it on the other. That's what the Lover's card represents in tarot. And so we've been going also through some patterns, how the feminine sometimes is still testing the masculine and creating these ultimatums. Either this or this, choose this or that. The feminine, I'll tell you that, from the principle of polarity, how I see it, how Spirit shows it to me. The feminine is the womb. She is the space where the pure spiral anchors itself, the spiral of life. She's not here to give masculine ultimatums. Why? Because when you have an ultimatum, you eventually have to choose, and they will choose. The feminine has to be all of it, all life, no choices, no options, because also the masculine principle within us, whether we're a woman or a man, has to be the choosing self-integrity principle. has to know. I need to know what I want. I need to know where to go. I need to know my desires. I need to feel myself. And therefore, I need to know what my soul desires and who it desires also to share this journey with. Because if you don't know those basic things, you have to go back to the start, right? Square one. And so it is a journey. And I've just been talking about this, how these principles, when you enter into a relationship, have to become the basic thing, not how you live your life now, how the other lives it, and all these indoctrinated things which are creating this comparison, almost like a table or chart, pros and cons. And a lot of people still have that, and they would, I don't know, choose someone or break up with someone according to that list. We're talking about illumined, tantric beloved journey here. This is being stripped off of anything that's in our head and moving into our heart, but basically the tantric part of us. And that's why they're called tantric beloved journeys. Because the tantric beloved is when two lovers meet, not just with their intellect and shared spirituality, not just within their heart, embracing each other through the Christos principle, but also downwards. Connect physically. They're embracing life. They're becoming the vessel of life. Therefore, these tantric beloved journeys are not just ethereal, they're very physical. Because this tantric cultivation needs to be brought forth through the bodies, which means you're activating and embodying the seed of life, which is the Elohim principle of life. The Elohim is life itself. It is the cultivation of life, not just the preservation of life, but the constant giving of life. And it's like two lovers basically giving each other this breath of life through being in that, not just communion, but constant state of unifying. And when things get, that's why through tantric path, you're going to get lots of patterns coming up, and people who are not ready, they're going to run. It's not, everyone wishes to have that. I have people who say, I wish for this. Well, you can wish for it to the end of your life, right? Doesn't mean you're going to actually claim it for yourself. And claiming it means doing the work. And the work is also beautiful. It's not just messy and difficult. But we're needing to entangle from a lot that the human has become, which is inorganic and it's distorted. And it's not the principle of life, which is the Elohim, and the mirror and image of the Creator, where we are first and foremost divine lovers. So it's very important now for the feminine to embrace that she is the womb, and the masculine is, right, it's the sword. It's the light blazing through. So we have the magnetic and electric principle, through which I've talked about for a very long time. But for me in my life now, all this knowledge I've gathered around the years that I was illumined with and imbued all of you with throughout the years. But now I get to experience it in my body. I get to feel it. Because just recently I had this experience. I have these, what I call dream walks, but they're daily. It's just the soul connection happens, and I would tune into it, and the energy is present. And it's not the same as daydreaming or fantasizing, because I basically, to tell you the truth, I can't do that. I never was able to, because I just can't function through the mind. And when the energy is not present, I'm not going to get visuals or images. So basically I can't fantasize about something or someone. Good plus and a minus here, right? But for me, when it happens, it's like the soul leads. I'm just going to get visuals and images, and it's going to go into my body, and it won't stay in the head. It literally moves into my body, and I'm starting to feel shivers and excitement in my body and rushes and the heart rushing. And it's like alive. It's so real, because the souls are there and they're corresponding, and they're exchanging something, and they're sharing. So if you look just at the physical world, the 3D plane, you're not going to maybe notice any of that. And if your focus is only there, you're not going to get the good stuff or to the good stuff. So you need to let that go if you need to learn how to really feel it through your soul, and soul showing you where that connection is or who is it with, instead of thinking, oh, who's my twin flame? Now that's the eternal question, right? Still, in these spiritual circles, this is about you consciously choosing to be that beloved, to become it. And when you get that mirror, be grateful for it. Be so thankful about it. But don't try to complicate about it. Where it's leading, what does it mean? Because you're again in the head, and you're not allowing the tantric cultivation to flow through your bodies fully. So that's why now I'm giving this attention to the soul and feeling where the connection is. Sometimes it's very intense, and that's all I think about. Then the next day it's gone, and it's going like this in waves, right? It's only normal. But at the same time, I'm also learning to be practically nurturing to myself. So it's an interesting dynamic of that union happening, tending to the body of the soul and tending to the physical body, until one day maybe this births a new kind of blending that's just an outpouring of love. And recently, through one of these experiences I've been having, there was one particularly full one, because I was actually guided to assist the masculine in a way that I've never experienced before, and it was through my tantric sexual cultivation. It was very interesting because I asked the being, I said, "You wish to receive that from me?" And it was almost like this anointment. It happened only through the inner planes, but the energy was so strong that I could feel it elevating and spinning. The spiral of my womb created this like an opening, so the masculine could release like a very thick energy. It just like poured out of them, and I could feel that. And it's difficult for people who are not tuning into the soul realms, and they're always longing for the physical presence to be there because they're not going to develop their gifts. A huge reason of the separation cycles is not just for people to do the inner integration, but also learn to cultivate the soul gifts that have not been expressed before. You haven't embodied them yet. You haven't claimed them. There's someone dormant. But when you get to have that, the soul will show you, look, this is what we can do. Isn't it amazing? And when I follow through those nudges, each time I'm surprised and I go like, wow. And you know, when the mind is present, the mind will go like, yeah, but this just happened in your thoughts. It's not real. When the body will feel it, I'll tell you that. The body is the only signal of truth. When the body feels all these shivers, sensations, it responds. The body only responds to life force. The body does not respond to impulses of the mind. So when you're fantasizing, you're not feeling anything. Nothing. Zero. When it's cultivation, when it's tantric, when the energy is present, when life force is flowing through, it's amazing. And this is what I wanted to express with that. It's hard because now I'm acting it up. I'm like acting it out. I'm not in it, because when I'm in it, it's real. But I'm trying to recreate it with my thoughts. Well, here we go again. I'm going to read you the poem now, and then I'll show you some cards. I think next time we can go a little deeper into these polarities. But today I think that's enough for now, because my videos do tend to get long, and they do make people want to quit early. So this next poem I have to share is about the surrendering to love, because a lot of times in the past few weeks I felt like I have no choice. It's just pulling me, and I wanted to do something, and this pulled me. And I was like, okay, I'm going with the flow of life force. I'm going here. And when you're just at the physical level of sustenance, and you might think, oh, I miss someone, they're not there. And you might be wrong, you know, because for me recently, like I never left. I'm just here. And it's a very intense thing. It's a really intense thing, but it's kind of pulling the best of me out of me. And with that, I'm also able to serve others who come to me for these consultations. And it's amazing. So if you want to get into that stream and flow with me, please first drop me off the pedestal. Don't think I'm more than you in any way. A lot of people in this community think, well, it's, you know, to receive help, I don't need it because I have to get to this alone. Not necessarily, you know. We're helping each other. And a lot of times after these consultations, we have some beautiful random conversations with these people. And we all need that at the human level. We crave for this sharing with like-minded people who share one same heart of love. So this poem is called Spiraling to Love. And in a nutshell, it just not explains, but it demonstrates these feelings that have been arising within me. Well, yeah, okay. Okay, whatever. But still, right? They kind of bring that to the surface, what has been laid dormant for so long. I'll read it to you. I'll try to go slow, not too fast, because then the poetry sort of loses its meaning if it's too fast. I am an intense being, I know, and I'm too fast and too skippy and too hyper for a lot of people, but I know how to be slow too, right? So, it's the poem. It's called Spiraling into Love. This love has entered into me and took me whole, all over me as the spiral of life, willing to surrender inside. I have no other choice. Step by step I go, following the voice of soul, whispering, overcoming dark controls, swaying back and forth. The knowing inside me grows, softness of spring taking over me. There's nothing more I can do. This love has put a spell on me. I move, you move, magnets settling into their perfect flow. The energy always comes back to the core, no matter what is chosen. Freedom pulls me back into this current where all torment is gone. Hopeless into faith and death into life. That's all I truly need to know. My heart is growing into you. I've never felt as sweet. with you night and day, only because I can. And as I stay, it changes who I am, and no stone is left unturned. Morphing me like clay, in your hands I am weak, and the devil has to let me go. This love forces movement into life, no matter where, no matter how. Deep inside, I know my love, I always have. It's all returning back to me, helping all the blind spots being able to see. Like a soft fire this love burns, awakening in my loins, turning towards you, I can see what you are to me. And what I am to you to be explored, woman to man, child to child, oh what a ride. I don't try to surrender, I just swim with the flow. Arrows in my heart telling me where to go, until one single focus remains. The love that dissolves all that is not, and becomes more, as the starfire blazes forth. My truth is revealed. I'm naked in my love, ignited from inside. Never before has my light shined as bright, all because of you and what I feel for this life to become. The potency of love, mesmerized. There is nothing else that's real, but the love which moves me into you. I know who I am now, better than before. My journey of love has just begun, so here I go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that in your own way. I'll show you the cards too. I can put my gloves off now, I think. I'm really enjoying because for the past 2 years, I was able to let go like this on Patreon. I was different than on my YouTube videos. YouTube videos were still like, I always felt this filtering and I'm needing to present myself in a certain way. The topics I needed to talk about were in most cases very heavy too. But now it's more about the love. It's almost like we've been through the storm and now we can just surrender to love. That's where many of us are now. So we don't have to take it as seriously as before. It's still a serious journey, but it's a journey of how we turn that seriousness to playfulness. So the first card I got, I wanted to do some messages, was Sophia. It's amazing how I was guided to wear pink today, because pink, like fluffy, is this softness. And I actually bought this when I was at my worst. I needed to be embraced almost like with this cotton candy, like, divine mother's embrace. And it's funny how Sophia card here looks very similar. It's that feminine. She is a sacred rose. It's like a feminine organs look like that. It's like an opening of the sacred flower petals to life. And it's that understanding that the mother knows, and love has us, love holds us. We've talked about that in the previous video, right? But where the human is still most of the time is this: surrender your fears of intimacy. This is what I got when I asked to get some messages, and it says, you're ready to let love in, compassionately identify and begin to release any patterns that stop you from opening your heart. And without intimacy, there's no love. And many people have actually stopped being intimate in their relationships. And, I used to have many sessions over the years, and I know how this looks and what people share with me. And when the intimacy is gone, it means you're not connecting on a soul level. It's not that anything is particularly wrong with each or other partner. It's just, there's a lack of cohesiveness there, and then we have this guilty consciousness when you feel that with the other, but the other is just showing you, look what you're lacking here, what you're not feeling anymore. But we have these self-restraints, and I know it's so super hard on earth to get through those. I mean, luckily for me, I never had those because I was a free spirit. But people bind themselves to such difficult situations in life sometimes that they forget the difference between a bond and a bondage. And a Tantric Beloved is when two selfless beings who, I'm not even saying they have to be perfectly illumined, because then what's the point of coming together anyway, right? But they need to have one same heart desire in their minds, which is surrendering to love. And then from that heart space, anchoring that deeper into the womb. That's why it's called a Tantric Beloved. And then pulling it up again. And in this scenario, sexuality is no longer seen as sex. It's witnessed as an act of tantric movement of life, and two beings able to cultivate that, and again exchanging it with life. That's why these strong vortices can be created through that togetherness. And that's why the darkness fears that so much and wants to create this repression of that. Like I've recently shared with you, I believe, that these whispers, to me, they would come to me in my dreams and they would hijack the connection. Recently I had this, it was in that space in the dream, connecting with that being, and then this whispers came and they started whispering in my ear, and it was this energy present here at the right side of my body. and the voice was not even that person's, it was a different voice. So they were trying to distort so that I would wake up and be like, oh no, this is not, but I saw through them. I'm like, come on, seriously, and the energy then went away, and I saw the spinning wheel, which is, the matrix grid. And sometimes we see through those things and sometimes we don't. And the doubt, whenever you doubt you're not in the mother, just know this. When people who are doubting and they succumb to the doubt, they still don't get the basic creation principles. The mother never makes us doubt. She's pure heart. When we're in the elevated state, in the joyful state, that's when the answers, what you're following is correct. When you're in doubt and fear and suppression and basically separation, you're not in this. You're in this. So anyway, we have from the Tao Oracle, we have these cards basically which showed me the approach, because the feminine used to have very judgmental approach, and I've been going through these sessions in which, let's say, the feminine will feel judged through the masculine very directly, but the feminine sometimes hold an inward-based judgment towards the masculine, right? And this just is reflected. Otherwise, you would not meet each other and share in that way. So the approach I'm being shown, because the card is called approach, you see these red stairs, and there's like these cherry blossoms behind the new gateway. There's an opening, and they're talking about a warm reception lighting up on arrival. This is like the feminine womb of life, the feminine beloved path is a path of receptivity. It's not that path when two beings are being more knowledgeable, growing together through knowledge, and they're kind of like, yeah, we're needing to be, let's discuss with each other, I have one very cute example. I know it's silly, but when I was younger, I used to watch this TV show called Dawson's Creek. I know it's silly, but I love that show because it was such a beautiful representation of two types of relationships. And there was a triangle, right? And one relationship was very analytical, right? They were soulmates, but they were always analyzing things and getting so deep into, so there was no sexuality present, zero. There was no magnet. The other two, right, the couple that in the end ended up together, they were like sparks flying all the time. They were like, because they were so different. That contrast kept creating this magnetic nature in them, and they had such huge love for each other. They were not so much the same as the first couple, but they always went into this debative kind of, like there's different types of relationships. That's why I said not with everyone you're going to have that, like being like two kids on a Ferris wheel, like, that's how it's supposed to feel. So basically, this path, this Tantric Beloved path is not like most people think. Like it's in an ashram and two people are like this and they're committed, and like, not at all. This is like two beings, like I wrote in the poem, child to child. It like awakens your inner child, and all you wish to do is give from that space. And like for me, all I wish to do is love. Like the other person's happiness becomes your love. And all you want to do is watch them accelerate into the best version of themselves. And you want to watch them play and have fun. And you're like just mesmerized just by watching them. That's true love. If it's not like that, you're not in true love. Sorry. Pardon me, but no. No thanks. So we have the next one, the gentle. This is again the feminine approach. We're now entering this where we're needing to be gentle with ourselves and towards the other. Not these confrontational, dismissive, argumentative approaches, right? Penetrating, soft approach, faith, moderation, right? Temperance. A subtle but deep influence, understanding, nonviolence. When the feminine learns how to retreat in her womb center, she creates a space of invitation. And sometimes the feminine might have an impression, this is the person and I'm doing this for them. No, you're doing this for yourself first. You're becoming the vessel for life. Then who comes and approaches you? It's going to be the one that's ready. So don't go for the who. Go for how you love. It might be a mirror and you really have that who in mind and you just love them. Yes, it's normal. We're humans. But still, remember that we are also just here as people. We're persons. Someone recently in a reading said something like, never forget when you worship someone that they're also just a person. They go to a bathroom, to a toilet, they brush their teeth, and it's like, yeah. When people look at the other almost like, oh, they're like this angel floating in the sky, they're fantasizing. They're not making this love real. It's not a reality for them. Because for me, true love is so, you don't love for a reason. The list stays blank. It's like you want to write the reasons why I love that person, when you can't find not one, but you still feel so much love, that's true love. You don't do it for reasons. Because they're like this to me, because they bought me this, because they treat me like that. Nope. Not even that. Not even that. That's really the mother's love. That's how the mother loves. And when two beings in their tantric union can cultivate that, no filters, just being, like I said, woman to man, man to woman, and child to child. That's truly creating that magnetic connection. And this was the last card, the attraction of opposites. That's what we're wanting, right? That's what we want. Seduction, temptation, magnetism, a passionate encounter, meeting halfway, coupling, sexual union. So yes, this union is sexual. It has to be. So whenever there's, you're in a partnership and there's no sexual attraction anymore, that's simply not present. And a lot of people are hoping for that to happen. So they're always in the head. Head is like hoping, praying for, not making it happen. By first realizing what you're not doing to step on this path and where your heart might lead you next, if you really feel still called to this path, and if not, at least choosing. And even not choosing is a choice. But staying in between is kind of very difficult for the soul, because it's like living in both worlds, but not making a step towards that which is your destined desire. So today we just scraped the surface. I know it was a long video, but more on these tantric aspects of the connections next time, because I myself go deeper and deeper in my own life. So anyway, thank you for watching, and remember, and so much love to all of you. And if you want to get any assistance, you know where to find me. I do these sessions now on Telegram or Skype, and I do still have those courses. Like, one very important course is orgasmic cultivation. In my case, it's called Cosmic Orgasm. It's on my Tantrika section of the page. And it's really deep. It helps you to understand that every healing we're doing has to come with that tantric cultivation, because this is basically the Elohim principle within us. It's the principle of life giving. When the force is absent from our body becomes like one giant head living on a stick. Literally, it's like, who are we even? We're no longer who we were meant to be, who we're created to be. So it's very important to understand the importance of sacred orgasm for the self and through that tantric union. And also remember, I have this audio called Avatars of Illumined Union through the perspective of sacred journey and the mission of this Tantric Beloved union. And more next time, always.